Let me welcome you to the very last module in this course. It is on development plan, monitoring, and evaluation. Although it's the last module, but it's not the least important in the whole planning cycle. And the module will be found very useful, at least for those of you who are really connected with the planning cycle, and based on where you work in Gambia, you'll be called upon from time to time to get involved in some of these activities from time to time. The module elaborates upon the centrality of continuous monitoring and evaluation to the process of any development planning effort. It is anchored on the assumption that continuous M&E is critical to the success of failure of a plan. And we would like to take you through some of the techniques in addition to the generic matrices for monitoring and evaluating plans, so that you can have a better and deeper understanding of M&E, and we want to also deepen your understanding of the M&E process by taking you through the monitoring and evaluation processes in the most recent Gambia's National Development Plan. We will highlight in this course the inherent challenges in the M&E of that plan, and then share some of the methods or ways of overcoming these strategies, so that monitoring and evaluation can be seen to be effective. Now, we will look at the concept and rationale, as well as the scope of monitoring. And let us start with the concept. Monitoring of a plan can be defined as the ongoing process by which stakeholders obtain regular feedback on the progress being made towards achieving the specified goals and objectives. Monitoring also involves tracking strategies and actions being taken and fashioning out ways and strategies that are needed to ensure progress towards the most important results. By definition, monitoring is the systematic collection and analysis of information as implementation of a project progresses. It helps to determine whether financial resources are sufficient and are being well used, whether the human resources are adequate, and whether they are actually doing what they plan to do. Essentially, monitoring involves the provision of regular feedback on the progress of project implementation and the problems faced during the period. Now, in terms of the importance and scope of monitoring, now let us have some key questions. Let us understand the questions that we need to ask in order to see the relevance and the scope of monitoring. Monitoring seeks to answer these questions. For example, are the plan implementers taking the actions they said they will take? That's the first question. Second, are they making progress on achieving the results that they said they wanted to achieve? The third aspect, are the pre-identified outputs being produced as planned and efficiently so? The fourth question, what are the issues, risks, and challenges that we face or foresee that need to be taken into account to ensure the achievement of the results? The fifth question, what decisions need to be made concerning changes to the already planned work in subsequent stages of implementation? The sixth question, will the planned and delivered outputs continue to be relevant for the achievement of the envisioned outcomes? Seventh question, are the outcomes we envisage remaining relevant and effective for achieving the overall national priorities, goals, and impacts? These are the questions monitoring must provide answers for. And in doing the monitoring evaluation, we need to also ask, what are we learning? What are we learning as we embark on this process? And I will tell you that at the minimum, all monitoring efforts should address these following points in terms of what we must learn. First, progress towards outcomes. The factors contributing to or impeding achievement of the outcomes. These are very critical things we must learn. Learning outcomes of IMA&E efforts. Monitoring entails analyzing whether or not outputs are in the process of being delivered as planned and whether or not the outputs are contributing to the outcome. Lessons being learned and creation of knowledge products also for wider sharing among the relevant stakeholders. Monitoring usually provides raw data that requires further analysis and synthesis prior to reporting for decision making, because it's going to be an input into further decisions. Using information gained from monitoring, program managers must analyze and take action on the program and project activities to ensure that the intended results that are in the agreed results and resources framework are being achieved. You know, start with the log frame, and you must, from time to time, compare these results with the milestones identified in the log frame. Now, let us look at Gambia's specific experience with plan monitoring and evaluation, taking the NDP 2018-21 as a case study. To start with, we must recognize that the plan was developed in close consultation with stakeholders, with active participation of all the technical working groups, resulting in what we can refer to as a homegrown national document that is result-oriented and focused on key strategic priorities and critical enablers to attain the government's vision for the people. Now, we have a multi-layered monitoring and evaluation system under that plan, in which case we have activities at the executive level, activities at the sector level, and then activities at the citizens level. That's the MIE system. At the executive level, we have the presidential MIE system. We have a dashboard allowing monitoring and tracking selected results and outcomes. And we also have delivery units within the office of the president to ensure timely implementation of priorities. Now, at the sector level, the framework we have for MIE at the sector level consists of results matrix with accompanying goals, outcome indicators that are disaggregated to an appropriate level with baselines and targets already developed. We also have metadata for each indicator to provide definitions and serve as reference, which are developed against which results will be compared. We also have regional technical advisory committees. We have annual review of progress, tools, evaluation, and capacity building. And we have web-based database managed by the Gambia Statistics Bureau to store and retrieve a plan. Now, at the citizen level, we have service charters with the standards of service delivery, public campaigns on key policy issues, including through social media. Now, at the executive level MIA processes, we must recognize that given the justifiable high expectation of the country's citizens, the process of monitoring of the implementation of the NDP will not be done in a business as usual approach. Now, it is important that the government at the highest level is seen to effectively deliver on its key priorities, and there is close monitoring of performance. And it is identified, the things that will be done in this line of thought to accomplish this are also identified. First is the setting up of this presidential MIA system, the dashboard that will allow for the monitoring and tracking of the outcomes and results, and then the establishment of the delivery unit, which we talk about. Now, at the sector level, we have an integrated plan of implementing the NDP. We have an MIE plan which includes result matrix, develop, where each strategic priority and critical enabler has accompanying goals, a set of outcomes, indicators with baselines and targets to facilitate tracking and reporting of progress of implementation. And this was to demonstrate government's commitment to the people through the implementation of the programs and policies. We also have metadata for each data, for each indicator to provide definitions and to serve as reference. So to meet the growing demand for information and accurate report on the progress of results on a timely basis, we have annual review progress, tools, evaluation, and capacity building, as earlier mentioned. Now, but despite, we must say, despite all these factors, we have the annual first even progress report on this plan that shows that these activities, these outline mechanisms do not totally deliver what is expected, and we can analyze the whole something. We have data analysis in terms of the MIE framework, the annual work programs, progress and quarterly report on achievement of outputs, annual progress reports, project delivery reports, substantive of technical documents, SDG reports, National Human Development Report, progress towards achieving outcomes, and standard progress reports on outcomes. These are the things that analyze and reform the documents, the products that we will see. Now, sometimes we have purposes. This have objectives that will sought to be achieved, because they use field visits to get this, to validate some of these reports. We have field visits, we have spot checks, reviews and assessment by stakeholders. Sometimes we have client surveys, and we also have reviews and studies to validate the information as they analyze this data. And in terms of participation, we have sectoral and outcome groups and mechanisms. We have steering committees and mechanisms. We have stakeholder meetings, focus group discussions, and then annual review to look at this and find out that the approaches and the documents we're having, they're valid. Now, let us also come to another thing we need to know as part of the thing we can learn. Having seen that experience from the Gambia, something we find out that they have well laid out documents and approaches, but the effectiveness is a problem. The expectations were not fully met at the end of the day. So, but now let's now proceed and look at the typology of MIE approaches. How, for our own knowledge, let us categorize the MIE approaches if we need to design an MIE template. In this course, you may be asked to design an MIE template, and we want to see all the things that to be covered. We want to see what the various approaches and how they vary by the type of monitoring you want to do. And there are many ways of categorizing project monitoring and evaluation approaches. One way is by the kind of activities carried out. Another is by the sequence of activities performed in the project cycle. And yet another way is by the kind of results which the activities are supposed to produce. We must know all this, because at the end of the day, we will encounter all these details, and we must be able to decipher what we are looking for under a particular category. And we should also be able to have an exercise in this course where you can build a template. In building a template to monitor a plan, you can then look at the specific categories and what you will be looking out for. These categories are, however, overlapping in some respects. We might know this, but the major ones we will always encounter are fourfold. First, we have input monitoring. Secondly, we have process monitoring. And then process evaluation, which is concerned with how the program operates and focuses on problems in service delivery. Then we have output monitoring. And then we have outcome and impact monitoring. So these are the key categories of monitoring activities. But now, part of the thing that renders M&E very weak is the lack of appropriate indicators. If you want to monitor and evaluate under these four categories we have identified, you must have your indicators, you must have the tools, and then so that you'll be able to draw appropriate benchmark and compare with your expectations with realities. So we need to know what indicators are. I know you know this, but at least let's go over it again. Indicators, monitoring indicators, refer to the information that will help us determine progress towards meeting project objectives. We have to use indicators so that you can determine progress towards meeting those objectives. The information can be quantitative or qualitative. So when we're talking about indicators, do not focus on your mind only on the quantitative aspect. It can also be qualitative. In some instances, information will not be available for the most suitable indicators of a particular result. And in those situations, stakeholders should use proxy indicators. You must have one way or the other to measure. You can use proxy if the particular or the most suitable indicators is not yet available. Proxy indicators are a less direct way of measuring progress against a result. Examples are presented in the next slide. You see, we demonstrate that of on quantitative and qualitative indicators and on proxy indicators. An indicator, nevertheless, should provide, where possible, a clearly defined unit of measurement and a target detailing the quantity, the quality, and timing of expected results. So now let us have these examples of quantitative and qualitative indicators. The quantitative indicators, for example, are statistical that measure results in terms of a number, percentage, or even rate. We talk about birth rates, terms of births per 1,000 population, or it can be ratio, number of males versus number of females. So it can be fertility rate and something mortality rate, infant mortality rate. So, or the growth, can measure growth of output in percentages. So these are quantitative indicators. And you have in your own scenario, you have determined that this is the percentage of growth, of changes that you desire for a particular outcome variable. Now, let us look at qualitative indicators. They reflect people's judgments, opinions, perceptions, and attitudes towards a situation or subject. And they include changes in sensitivity, satisfaction, influence, awareness, understanding, attitudes, quality, perception, dialogue, or sense of well-being. And they may be measured also in terms of compliance. To what extent people complied with the particular issue, it is quality, or the extent to which agreement is reached, or the level of satisfaction, whether look at the degree of satisfaction. For example, whether they're very satisfied, or they're fairly satisfied, or they're satisfied, or they're not satisfied. So this can be a kind of measure qualitatively, or you can say in terms of whether they agree with some patterns of progress being made, whether they agreed strongly or fairly agree, or whether they disagreed. So these are ways. Sometimes you design some lighter scale, Likert scale, if you are doing this, and you look at these qualitative measures, you define this, and then assign scores. And from that scores, you can still find averages and then come with a conclusion, in terms of the analysis. So this is the way you will use the qualitative to still monitor. You want to look at awareness, for example, whether they're highly aware or just fairly aware, or maybe they are aware of a particular program, or they are even unaware. They may be unaware of the project or of the issue you are talking about. So you can also put scores there again, if they are aware, the awareness level of awareness, whether it's high, whether it's low, or whether people are even generally unaware. So this is the way you use the qualitative scores and then come about a measure and then see whether they are making progress in that direction. Now, look at policy indicators, for example. You can look at percentage of corrupt individual in terms of then people then do surveys on corruption perception. How do you perceive corruption in a particular system? Now, by definition, we need to know what monitoring indicators are, therefore, to be able to design a proper measure and how you compute. Indicators refer to the information that will help us determine progress towards meeting project objectives. An indicator should provide, where possible, a clearly defined unit of measurement and a target detailing the quantity, quality, and timing of expected results. Indicators should be relevant, independent, and can be precisely and objectively defined in order to demonstrate that the objectives of the project have been achieved. These basic characteristics are summarized in what is generally referred to as SMART indicators, and in that case, it has to be specific. The indicators must be specific. That information required must refer to a specific condition or situation. There has to be measurable. To be SMART, the indicator has to be measurable. It must comply with the measurability condition. That is, results, whether quantitative or qualitative, must have measurable indicators, making it possible to assess whether they were achieved or not. Then it must be achievable. The results must be within the capacity of the implementers to achieve. You don't get something that is so mind-boggling, is so overblown that is even the indicator you are using, it cannot even be achieved. Don't use unattainable measure to track progress. Then it has to be relevant. Results must make a contribution to selected priorities of the national development framework. So the relevance is very key. Then it's time-bound. Results are never open-ended. There's an expected date of accomplishment, so it must be time-bound. So you must be familiar with this key characteristics. So as you design them, define them, describe them, use these indicators to evaluate or to monitor. These characteristics must play out. And the indicators are important. Why are they important? We talk about indicators. Some people will say, no, just go ahead. Some people, sometimes when people want to track progress, governments, oftentimes they will just set up a committee. They can set up what we refer to as task force. Let's task force go and monitor the level of construction on the field. Let's task force go and see the provision of water in particular localities. Let task force go and check the road construction. Let's go to site and so on. Monitoring is more than that. That is on the spot check for verification can be done. But indicators are important. What will you be looking for when you get to the field? Indicators are important on account of their roles in providing clear information to inform decision-making for ongoing program or project management. They're also critical in a number of ways. I will measure 4 ways which the criticality of indicators must be emphasized. First, measuring progress and achievements understood by the different stakeholders is key. Also, clarifying consistency among activities, outcomes, and impacts is very key. Look at the various categories that we mentioned earlier on in terms of the typology. Is it outcome? Is it the process? Is it outcomes? Or is it impact? You have to be able to clarify that consistency between them. Now, in terms of ensuring legitimacy and accountability to all stakeholders by demonstrating progress. So if you demonstrate there is progress, that's the accountability is ensured. And then people feel satisfied, and then they really appreciate that what they expect to be done is being done, and the outcomes they also expect are being delivered. And then there is hope. They keep their hopes alive along the line that at the end of the day, they will get to the promised land, they will get to the destination. So when you monitor and you have this annual progress report and so on, you keep their hopes alive. If there are areas of concern, you have enough time to make corrections. Assess project and staff performance is possible. So if there is weakness in capacity, you identify them and you make necessary changes, or you take necessary actions to improve the situation. So this is why you have those indicators to measure them. Then the process of formulating the indicators, therefore, we must understand clearly. So, okay, the first thing you do, you can be called upon. Now we want to start. Let's do some. Okay, please, can you come up with some indicators, unique indicators, but that are smart? So it will be your responsibility to design indicators. So we also want you to know the key questions you need to unravel if you are asked to prepare indicators. And from time to time, that will be part of your responsibilities. So as evaluators or as technocrats that are working in the planning organization, planning divisions, and so on, you will be called from time to time to think through appropriate indicators to monitor programs, projects in various sectors. Let's look at the things you will therefore consider, the questions you need to unwrap. Now, how can we measure the expected results that are being achieved? Ask yourself. And as you ask, now as we're going about the task, you tend to provide solution to this. And there'll be group discussions, your skill and expertise and knowledge will be called to question, and you put all those asanas onto the table to do the exercise. What type of information can demonstrate a positive change? Ask yourself. Now, what can be visibly monitored with given resource and capacity constraints? You look at the available resources, and then you say, okay, with these available resources, you determine the feasibility of carrying out the exercise. And then you look at the constraints too. Will timely information be available for the different monitoring exercises? What will the system of data collection be? And who will be responsible? Sometimes we look up to the Bureau of Statistics, but they too have their own limitation and capacity constraints. And some of the projects we want to monitor also may not be under their purview. They, for example, may also need to use some of the data project management staff, the project units, the data they have. When the officials of the Bureau of Statistics come around, they may also have to collect data from the monitoring experts. So it is not in all cases that they will go and float fresh survey. There may be resource constraints, so they may have to fall back on project documents and project data, which experts and implementers will need to collect. Can national systems be used or augmented? You determine, oh, this is beyond what, or maybe the National Bureau, because of even the time you will go and collect. Their own routine, their own schedule, the level of aggregation or disaggregation, sometimes the granularity of the data you need may be something that is only at the local level you can get the best and the most accurate information. These are issues to be resolved before settling on particular indicators to be used for M&E. More often than not, the cart is put before the horse in this regard, such that indicators are selected without adequate consideration of data availability and the capacity to generate the indicator. We must take note of this. Now, there are a number of pitfalls, therefore, in monitoring and evaluation, which you need to avoid. And we want to identify this. And this will come off from lessons, of reviews, of the documents, of the Gambian experience, and other experiences. And this will provide guide for you to improve your performance and capabilities and even skills as you go about it, so that mistakes of the past can be avoided and we can move in, we can have incremental knowledge and be more efficient in the delivery of our services. Now, despite the increasing awareness about the role of MIA and attempts by some organizations to provide funds and facilities for the exercise, expected results continue to fall below expectation, and the system remains ineffective due to some inherent pitfalls, which we want you to grasp now. First, the physical and financial indicators monitors often do not reflect the actual performance of programs. And that's why we raise those questions, before, as to what to consider in designing even the indicators. Second, whatever information is generated are not analyzed in some cases with a problem-solving perspective to aid the implementing agencies to reassess the original schedule of work. Sometimes after M&E reports are written, they are never used to provide evidence base for decision-making in the management of the projects. Now, thirdly, another common pitfall, there's no mechanism through which the planners and implementing agencies can have ready access to information in a format that is useful to them. The data may be so raw that planners will not find it even the appropriate time. Now, sometimes also another pitfall, focus on either financial or physical progress is usually the order of the day, rather than on both. So you cannot divorce one from the other. The two must be taken into consideration. You look at financial progress, you look at physical progress. How are you utilizing the resources? Sometimes the executive capacity to even spend may be a limitation. You see how much of the resources are being committed. So you have to look into that. Sometimes the release of funds, look at the progress in terms of release of funds to drive what progress is made in terms of the physical aspect of the implementation. Sometimes the monitoring exercise is so routinized and comprehensive that project staff are overwhelmed with so much information which they are unable to analyze meaningfully. This is often as a result of absence of monitoring indicators. If you have your indicators, you can analyze quickly, make your calculations, and then make useful suggestions and provide quality evidence to inform decision making. Now, let's briefly look at evaluation so that we don't fall into this idea that maybe the two are exactly the same. So they go along, they have ways, they overlap, they have semblance, but we must also know the characteristics of evaluation and what it actually means. Evaluation is the periodic assessment of the relevance and performance of the project in the context of its stated objectives. And the performance of a project is measured by the extent to which it achieves objectives and the impact it produces, the factors affecting the level and distribution of the benefits generated. Now, ongoing evaluation focuses on 4 sets of questions. And I want you to take note of these questions. What is the response of the project beneficiaries to the inputs, services, or other forms of assistance provided by the project? The second question, are the beneficiaries accepting them to the extent anticipated? The third question, is the project having consequences which were not intended or anticipated in its design? You need to know. Fourth question, does the intervention model on which the project is based remain valid in a changing environment? For example, look at what happened last year. Say the COVID-19 pandemic, fortuitous situation. Many projects started 2 or 3 years before then. Some projects were supposed to even end in 2020. But look at what was happening at that time. So we need to really see what the intervention model, will call for to deal with this. The risks of that project, are they properly determined, and the measures to mitigate the risk, were they properly taken? Were they envisaged? These are the things to consider. Evaluations are crucial because they often influence the development of policies contained in plans, reflecting the policymakers' responsiveness to assessment reports. Now, we also have various types of evaluation. And like we did for monitoring, we need to look at the typology of evaluation because there are various categories. Evaluation activities can be categorized in terms of periods in which they occur in the project cycle or the frequency with which activities are carried out. Evaluation can also be categorized according to the implementation stage and evaluation approach. These are the things to consider if you want to decipher where a particular evaluation exercise falls. Now, broadly, in terms of implementation stage, we have what we call formative evaluation. We also have summative evaluation. Formative evaluation is conducted at midterm, also called periodic, semi-annual, or process evaluations. There are various names. So that sometimes we talk about process evaluation is going on, or to evaluate the process, and so on. Note that we're talking about formative evaluation. Now we have summative evaluation. This is only conducted when the project has been completed. A summative evaluation, also called terminal evaluation. Some people call it final evaluation. Some people also call it outcome or impact evaluation. No, the common denominator here is that the project must be completed before you take on this. Then the summative evaluations fall into two categories. We have end evaluations, which aim at establishing the situation when external aid 2 to 5 years after external support has been terminated. And the main purpose the project has had is likely to have failures. So you must take note of those distinctions. The outcome, you must note, is the short-term results on the level of the purpose of the project typically changes the way beneficiaries do things as a result of the project. Whereas when we talk about impact, we look at long-term results on the level of broader goals, in a sense, the ultimate and eventual effects of the outcome. So this is the distinction when we look talking about outcome evaluation, impact evaluation. Even those activities come under some between outcome evaluation and even impact evaluation. Outcome is the short-term result on the level of purpose of the project, typically changes the way beneficiaries do things. And we want to look at the change that have occurred as a goals, and then the ultimate and eventual effects of the outcome that has been achieved. So these are the need to take note of. Now, what are the types of evaluation that we need to also do by evaluation approach? If we're looking at the approach, let's see the various types. First, we have self-evaluation in terms of the approach. We also have participatory evaluation. We have rapid participatory evaluation. We have external evaluation. We also have interactive evaluation. So we have these methods, but 5 methods which are commonly applied. The self-evaluation here, you are holding the mirror, to yourself. to assess how you are doing and how you can improve on your performance. And the MIE units or departments can sometimes do some self-evaluation. And we also can distinguish participatory aspect of it, which involves not only the organization's project staff, but also a representative sample of the beneficiaries of the project. So you can also make it participatory. So in that case, you say it is a participatory evaluation, because the project staff, they're not doing the self-evaluation alone, but at this time, they also involve some staff, a sample of beneficiaries. Now, the rapid participatory evaluation, this is a qualitative way of performing evaluations. It involves a number of different methods and tools, such as literature, data review, direct observation, sometimes field visits, and then directly observe what is going on using semi-structured interviews with beneficiaries, and also you want independent opinion, on your findings, kind of a dispassionate view of the results that have been achieved. Sometimes we have been interactive. You can describe the evaluation as being interactive, and this involves intense interaction between the external evaluator appointed by the authority and staff members of your organization. So these are the various types that you must know. And in terms of methodology, a broad methodology of evaluation, within the context of the result-based monitoring and evaluation system, monitoring and evaluation now can be considered in terms of this result-based evaluation system. And there, the monitoring MIE system, which is results-based, is defined as involving a systematic collection of data on specified indicators in order to generate information to stakeholders on progress, achievement, and goals of the project, including the allocation of the given project budget and funds. So look at it as a results-based M&E system. And the focus here, the evaluation here, aims at assessment of the performance for feedback reporting on the goals and impact of the intervention program. And this requires the use of not only monitoring information, but also information on the relevant variables. Such information sets are analyzed, a report produced on the goals and impacts of the program. Impact evaluations can also explore unintended consequences, whether positive or negative for beneficiaries, what we call externalities, positive or negative. In this connection, the relevant questions as follows. How did the project affect the beneficiary? Were any improvements a direct result of the project, or would they have improved anyway? This is the case of attribution. And you need to come up with sophisticated methodology sometimes if you'll be able to ascribe, to attribute the result being observed to the project that has been implemented. So you ask this question: would those results have been obtained anyway without the project? So by using certain methodologies and sophisticated analytical approaches, you can really go through all this and then come with valid results. In broad terms, an evaluation, we have a slide here to further describe the key questions on the formative, because if you're looking at typical evaluation questions, let's take you through this. Typical evaluation questions by type of evaluation. You see, if you're doing formative evaluation, the question you should be asking, the questions you need to ask if the evaluation is formative. We'll give examples here. To what extent do the activities correspond with those presented in the plan? If they do not correspond, why were changes made? And were the changes justified? These are the things that are of interest if you are doing some formative evaluation. You also need to ask, did the project follow timeline presented in the plan? Have the personnel that carried out the activities been suitable? Are the project's actual costs in line with initial budget allocations? To what extent is the project moving towards the anticipated goals and objectives? What changes and obstacles have been identified, and how have they been dealt with? What are the main strengths and weaknesses of the project? For example, if you are called upon all these progress reports we're writing, we are evaluating the performance, they fall under formative evaluation. And you must know the critical questions to ask. This is what you'll be analyzing. This is, you want to find answers to this question before you can say, oh, this is the progress we are making. And then we can then say that your MIE system is effective because it's providing desired answers and is credible input into decision making. So you must note all this. And if you are doing summative evaluation, like we have described what summative evaluation is, we have specific questions. We have characteristic questions. First, to what extent did the project meet its overall goals and objectives? What impact did the project have on the lives of beneficiaries? Which components were the most effective? What significant unintended and accidental, that is not deliberate, impact did the project have? Is the project replicable? Is the project sustainable? These are typical evaluation questions that you need to ask. And in broad terms, let's take you through the key evaluation questions you must ask when you are called upon to evaluate a particular project. And there are 5 key areas. You need to interrogate the relevance of the project, of the project and of the activities, during the implementation. Then you interrogate the effectiveness of the project, the efficiency, the impact, and sustainability. These are the key areas. When you are called upon, you may even be called upon an external evaluator. Or even if you are evaluating internally, looking at kind of doing summative evaluation, you focus on these broad areas. And within each area, you can still ask some questions, but these are the broad areas you cannot ignore or avoid. Now, let's take you through norms of evaluation. To derive the expected benefit of evaluation, it is important to give adequate attention to the following norms. There are ethics of doing the evaluation. Independence. We want the evaluation to be independent. We don't want the result to be contaminated by unnecessary influences. So that is important. The intentionality. What is the intention of the evaluation? The issue of transparent process in the evaluation. You must disclose information. There must be openness in the use of information and the way information is made available. The issue of ethics, ethicality, in terms of the people you will involve in collecting the data, must follow ethics. The issue of impartiality. There must be no intention to favor either the implementers or the beneficiaries. There should be no exaggeration. You have to be dispassionate. And you have to be dispassionate. And you have to really show professionalism rather than impartiality. Then the quality of the exercise, the writing of the report, the timeliness of the exercise and of the delivery of the reports so that it can be put to good use. These are the things you need to know. And then when we discuss monitoring and evaluation, they're interrelated, I mentioned. So the relationship between them, let us emphasize this so that you can have a good idea of the interconnections between the two of them as we move gradually to a close of this presentation and of this course. Monitoring and evaluation are so intertwined that analysts often sometimes overlook the basic distinctions. But in spite of the intricate relationship, it is necessary to recognize their complementary roles and decipher the thin lines of differences as you develop your expertise along this line. This is important because the two activities are often the victims of financial deprivation by those implementing projects, and blames are not properly apportioned when there are failures in the implementation process. Sometimes when budgetary resources are being allocated to activities under a plan, you find out that the MIE are unduly stifled and unduly starved of funds, because people tend to feel that, it's coming at the very last, you don't need so much money. But usually some people, you decide the proportion of the project fund that must go to evaluation. You need to take a decision, even if it is small, but it must be recognized, it must be appropriated, and it must be released for the functions to be carried out. Sometimes, even when the M&E activities are completed or carried out, where documents have to be even reported and kept and even published for distribution and dissemination, you don't have funds to do this. And then sometimes the reports are put on the shelf. So we need to take note of this. Now, let us look at the complementary roles of evaluation and monitoring. We talk about this intricate relationship. Monitoring, for example, explains aims and objectives of the plan, whereas at the same time, evaluation analyzes why intended results were or were not achieved. Now, monitoring links the objective to the activities undertaken and the human and financial resources used, whereas evaluation draws conclusions on cost effectiveness and staff performance. You can see they're along the same line. Look at the way they come in. The other time we talked about efficiency as part of the broad areas of focus in evaluation. This is where we look at the cost, effectiveness, and so on. Now, monitoring translates objectives as outlined in the plan into performance indicators, whereas evaluation examines the implementation process, which is called process of formative evaluation. You can see the relationship. Now, monitoring collects data on the indicators and compares actual results with targets, whereas at the same time, evaluation explains unachieved objectives and explores unintended results. Monitoring reports progress to program managers and alerts them to problems, whereas evaluation provides lessons, highlights significant accomplishments, and program potentials and offers suggestions for improvement on the basis of the analysis that have been carried out. So their roles here are therefore complementary. Now, let us also draw some thin lines of differences between evaluation and monitoring. And we must also have indicators of doing this, because if we want to draw this, you have to come out clearly with your indicators. And we have a number of indicators here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 8 indicators to draw a thin line between the two of them. Let's look at frequency, for example, of operation. How frequently do you carry out the exercise? In terms of monitoring, it is continuous throughout the life of the project. Whereas in terms of evaluation, it's periodic. It's periodic review at significant point in project progress. For example, we have midpoint of project and the end of project evaluation. This is one distinction in terms of the frequency. Now, basic purpose for monitoring is to improve efficiency and adjust the work plan if necessary. And for evaluation, the purpose is to improve effectiveness, impact, sustainability, and future programming. For scope, monitoring is day-to-day activities, outputs, indicators of progress and change. Whereas for evaluation, we assess overall delivery of outputs and progress towards objectives and goals. In terms of, for example, if you do midterm evaluation. In terms of focus, in monitoring, we focus on inputs, outputs, and outcomes. In terms of evaluation, talk about the relevance, the effectiveness, the efficiency, and then the impact. You can see the distinction. Then main action. Main action in monitoring is track progress. And main action in evaluation is assessment. Do some analysis there. You can use various even techniques of analysis. Now, main participants. In monitoring, you have project staff, project beneficiaries. In evaluation, we have external evaluators, we have facilitators, we have project users, we have project staff, we have donors. These are the distinctions. Then process. For monitoring, we have regular meetings, interviews, monthly monitoring, quarterly reviews, annual reviews, and so on. For evaluation, it's not as frequent. We have extraordinary meetings, we have additional data collection exercises, apart from the data available from the project management unit, apart from the data available from monitoring exercises. You may hold extraordinary meetings, with project implementers to dig deep into some aspect of effectiveness and of relevance, and collect additional data from beneficiaries and so on, and analyze before you can draw lessons and talk about future programming and sustainability. This is a major distinction. Then in terms of the written outputs, monitoring, we have regular reports and updates to project users, management, and to donors. Whereas for evaluation, you have written report with recommendations for changes to project and presented in workshop to different holders and for validation. And then you communicate the findings so that you can draw lessons for follow-on activities as far as that sector is concerned. Let's look at specific benefits of evaluation. That is, what are the uses and who are the beneficiaries of evaluation results? Evaluation is a means to an end, I must tell you, not an end in itself. The information derived should be used for evidence-based decision-making. Thus, major stakeholders should be engaged in various ways in the conduct of the evaluation. The possible users of evaluation results are management and program or project officers and managers, others involved in project design and implementation, policy makers, legislators, development partners, donors and other funders, and public, and then project beneficiaries. These are the areas where the benefits must flow. Now, when you do an evaluation and you get your results and then you submit, it can be midterm evaluation, it can be endline evaluation. What will the results be used for? There are 6 main areas of use. First, to design or validate a development strategy, to make mid-course corrections, if it's a midterm evaluation, to improve project or program design and implementation, to ensure accountability, to make funding decisions, to increase knowledge and understanding of the benefits and challenges of development programs and projects intended for the improvement of the welfare of the people. So these are the ways in which the results of evaluation can be used. And we have seen that sometimes, because of inadequate understanding of these various areas we have discussed, we have an MIE system that is performing in a suboptimal ways. And at this point, we need to therefore consider ways of strengthening planning and monitoring, especially now. We can come back again to the particular case of Gambia and look at the results that we have seen over the annual progress report that has been written, and even when we look at the provisions in the document as to what activities the M&E should perform at various levels, at the executive level, sectoral level, and at the citizen level. When we look at all this, and then we come with at least 4 areas of improvement where the MIE system should be strengthened. The first area is capacity building and training of personnel. This is what we are doing now. We are sure that those of you attending this course now, we believe that it will improve your capacity to design MIE programs, to identify indicators, to build indicators, and then even to carry out the process. This is very important, and this must be done from time to time, because what we observe in some instances is that some people will receive this training like this, and in a civil service system, by the time they stay for 3 or 6 months, or sometimes 1 year, they're transferred. They're transferred to other functions where they cannot put this to use. So, and if you need to bring new hands there, they too must have the benefit of capacity building. Now, the second way is adequate funding of MIE activities. I mentioned earlier on that the activities is often downgraded, often starved of funds, often relegated to the background in terms of funding decisions. That we need to change this and then provide adequate funding for the identified activities. Even we have mentioned that we always have budget constraints, but when you allocate some funds, therefore determine the priorities, the areas you want to cover in your M&E, the indicators you want to monitor, and how you want to go about the work. The third area is to sustain the level of M&E commitment. The Gambian plan really demonstrates a lot of commitment to M&E. It is desirable and advisable that this level of commitment should be sustained in the Gambia. Then we need to adopt results-based monitoring approach to monitoring and evaluation. I mean, we have smart indicators, and we look at the log frame, always as an appendix in the plan and so on, and see compliance with specified targets and so on. So let's use that. And then under that, we look at evaluation criteria and then the focus of evaluation so that we can come with good lessons and we can then change programs appropriately to achieve better results. Finally, we need to integrate in terms of ways of of strengthening M&E. We need to integrate the M&E system with the policy decision making. We do not do M&E for M&E's sake. It should provide inputs into the decision-making process. We cannot therefore do M&E and keep it on the shelf. There must be funds for circulation, for dissemination of the findings, and for using the results of policy decision-making. This is very, very important. Thank you very much. We have a lot of exercises on this, and because at the end of the day, we're going to ask you to design a template, a typical template for monitoring particular projects, and this will try to understanding of what we have been saying, and then by the time you go back to put this into practice right in the offices, then you can have a seamless experience, and then you can decide what should be useful and effective to the department and to the government. Thank you very much for your cooperation. I must remind you also, we in addition to the exercises which we take up during the practical sessions and which may come up one way or the other, the assessment of this course, we have quizzes. These quizzes, you also have to go through it, and then we'll grade and assess your understanding of what has been done. Thank you.